ಮೂಲಕ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡುತ್ತಾ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಹೀಗೆ ಸಹಜವಾಗಿಯೇ ಫೋರಮ್ ಫಾರ್ ಫ್ರೀ ಎಂಟರ್ಪ್ರೈಸ್ ಮತ್ತು ಗೋಖಲೆ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ ವಿಚಾರ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳು ನಡುವೆ ಅನೇಕ ದಶಕಗಳ ಬಾಂಧವ್ಯ ಇದೆ. ಇವತ್ತು ವಿಮೋಚನೆಗೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತಿರುವ ಗ್ರಂಥ ಫೋರಮ್ ಆಫ್ ಫ್ರೀ ಎಂಟರ್ಪ್ರೈಸ್ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯನ್ನು ಅದರ ಆರಂಭದಿಂದ ಕಟ್ಟಿ ಬೆಳೆಸಿದವರು ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಮೂಲದವರು, ಗೋಖಲೆ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗೆ ತುಂಬ ನಿಕಟವರ್ತಿಗಳು ಆಗಿದ್ದ MR ಪೈ ಅವರನ್ನು ಕುರಿತು SV ರಾಜು ಅವರು ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೆದಿರುವ ಪರಿಚಯ ಗ್ರಂಥದ ಕನ್ನಡ ಅನುವಾದವನ್ನು ಶ್ರೀಮತಿ ಶ್ಯಾಮಲಾ ಮಾಧವ್ ಅವರು ಅತ್ಯಂತ ಆಸ್ಥೆ ವಹಿಸಿ ಸಿದ್ಧಪಡಿಸಿರುವ ಈ ಅನುವಾದ ಗ್ರಂಥವನ್ನು ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನ IBH ಪ್ರಕಾಶನ ಶ್ರೀಮತಿ ಶ್ಯಾಮಲಾ ಮಾಧವ್ ಅವರಿಗೂ IBH ಪ್ರಕಾಶನ ಎಡಗ ಅವರಿಗೂ ಅಭಿನಂದನೆ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸುತ್ತಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಗ್ರಂಥದ ಲೋಕಾರ್ಪಣೆ ಮಾಡಲು ಒಪ್ಪಿ ಆಗಮಿಸಿರುವ ಸುಪ್ರೀಂ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ನ್ಯಾಯಾಧೀಶರಾದ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಮಾಜಿ ಲೋಕಾಯುಕ್ತರು, ಈ ವೇದಿಕೆಗೆ ಸುಪರಿಚಿತರು ಆದ ನ್ಯಾಯಮೂರ್ತಿ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ N. ಸಂತೋಷ್ ಹೆಗ್ಡೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಗೌರವಪೂರ್ವಕ ಸ್ವಾಗತ ಕೋರುತ್ತಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಗ್ರಂಥದ ಲೇಖಕರಾದ ನಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ಪರಿಚಿತರೇ ಆದ SV ರಾಜು ಅವರು ಕಳೆದ 50 ವರ್ಷಗಳಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೂ ಜನಪದ ಸಂಘಟನೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಲಿಬರಲ್ ವಿಚಾರಧಾರೆಯ ಫ್ರೀಡಮ್ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಸಪತ್ರಿಕೆಯ ಸಂಪಾದಕರೂ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ರಾಜಾಜಿ ಪ್ರತಿಷ್ಠಾನ ಮೊದಲಾದ ಹಲವಾರು ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿ ನಿರ್ವಹಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಲಿಬರಲ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಸಂಘಟನೆಯ ಪದಾಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳೂ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. 4 ದಶಕಗಳಷ್ಟು ದೀರ್ಘಕಾಲ MR ಪೈ ಅವರಿಗೆ ನಿಕಟವರ್ತಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದರು. ದಿವಂಗತ MR ಪೈ ಅವರನ್ನು ಕುರಿತು ಒಂದೆರಡು ಮಾತು. ಗೋಖಲೆ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯ ಕಾರ್ಯವರ್ಗವೂ ಸೇರಿದಂತೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ಕಾರ್ಯಕರ್ತರಿಗೂ ಸುಪರಿಚಿತರಾಗಿದ್ದ MR ಪೈ ಒಬ್ಬ ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ಕಾರ್ಯಕರ್ತರು ಹೇಗಿರಬೇಕು ಎಂಬುದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವರಂತಹ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಮಾಡಲ್ ತುಂಬ ದುರ್ಲಭ. ಮೌಲ್ಯನಿಷ್ಠೆ, ಧ್ಯೇಯಬದ್ಧತೆ, ಶ್ರಮಪಡುವ ಸ್ವಭಾವ, ತಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರತಿಭೆ ಸಭ್ಯ ಅಷ್ಟು ಜನಹಿತ ಸಾಧನೆಗೂ ವಿನಿಯೋಗವಾಗಬೇಕೆಂದು ಕಾಳಜಿ, ಎಂದೂ ನಿರುತ್ಸಾಹಗೊಳ್ಳದಿರುವಿಕೆ, ಅಧ್ಯಯನಶೀಲತೆ, ರಚನಾತ್ಮಕ ದೃಷ್ಟಿ, ಈ 16 ಶ್ರೇಷ್ಠ ಗುಣಗಳು MR ಪೈ ಎಂಬ ಆ ಒಬ್ಬ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಗೆ ಸೇರಿಕೊಂಡು ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದವೋ ಯೋಚಿಸಿದರೆ ಆಶ್ಚರ್ಯವಾಗುತ್ತದೆ. ಅನೇಕರು ಸಮಯಾನುಕೂಲ ಆದಾಗ ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಸಮಾಜ ಕಾರ್ಯ ಮಾಡುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಆದರೆ MR ಪೈ ಅದನ್ನು ಹಗಲು ರಾತ್ರಿ ವರ್ಷಗಳುದ್ದಕ್ಕೂ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದರು. ಬ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಸೇವೆಗಳ ಸುಧಾರಣೆ, ಪ್ರಯಾಣಿಕರ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳು, ಅಂಚೆ ತಂತೆ ಸೇವೆಯ ಸುಧಾರಣೆ, ಟೆಲಿಫೋನ್ ಸೇವೆಯ ಸುಧಾರಣೆ, ವಿವಿಧ ಸ್ತರಗಳ ಭ್ರಷ್ಟಾಚಾರಕ್ಕೆ ವಿರೋಧ, ಹೀಗೆ MR ಪೈ ಅವರ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ಷೇತ್ರದ ಸಾರ್ವಜನಿಕ ಕ್ಷೇತ್ರ ಯಾವುದೂ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ತಮ್ಮ ಜನರ ಕಾಯಕವನ್ನು MR ಪೈ ಕೊನೆಯವರೆಗೂ ನಡೆಸಿದ್ದನ್ನು ಒಂದು ಅದ್ಭುತವೆಂದೇ ಹೇಳಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ. ಎ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಲೆಸ್ ಜಾಬ್ ಇನ್ನೆಷ್ಟು ಕಾಲ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಎಂಬ ಅವರು ಎಂದೂ ನಿಮಿಷ ಮಾತ್ರ ಯೋಚಿಸುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಸನ್ನಿವೇಶ ಅನುಕೂಲವಾಗಲಿವೆಂಬ ಎಂದು ಹಿಂದೆ ಸರಿದವರಲ್ಲ. ಯಾವ ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೆ ಒದಗುವ ಸಂಘಟನೆ ಇಲ್ಲವೆನಿಸಿದರೆ ನಾವೇ ಹುಟ್ಟು ಹಾಕಿ ಇದರಾಯಿತು ಎಂದು ಮುನ್ನುಗ್ಗುತ್ತಿದ್ದರು. ಹೀಗೆ ಬ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಠೇವಣಿಕಾರರ ಸಂಘ, ವಿಮಾನ ಪ್ರಯಾಣಿಕರ ಹಿತರಕ್ಷಣ ಸಂಘ, LPG ಗ್ಯಾಸ್ ವಿತರಕರ ಒಕ್ಕೂಟ, ಹೀಗೆ ಪೈ ಹಬ್ಬಿಸಿದ ಕಾಲ ಅಗಾಧವಾದುದು. ಫೋರಮ್ ಆಫ್ ಫ್ರೀ ಎಂಟರ್ಪ್ರೈಸ್, AD ಶ್ರಾಫ್ ಮೆಮೋರಿಯಲ್ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟ್, ರಾಜಾಜಿ ಫೌಂಡೇಶನ್ ಮೊದಲಾದ ಹಲವಾರು ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳು ಜೊತೆಗಂತೂ ಅವರು ಅಭಿನ್ನರಾಗಿ ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದರು. ಇಷ್ಟೇ ಎಲ್ಲ ಚಟುವಟಿಕೆಗಳ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಸಾರ್ವಜನಿಕ ವಿಷಯಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಪತ್ರಿಕೆಗಳಿಗೆ ನಿರಂತರ ಪತ್ರ ಬರೆಯುತ್ತಿದ್ದರು. 3-4 ದಿವಸಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದಾದರೂ ಅವರು ಜನಪ್ರಿಯ ಪ್ರವರ್ತಕ ಪತ್ರಿಕೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಕಟವಾಗಿದೆ. ಪತ್ರಿಕೆಗಳು ಪ್ರಕಟವಾಗದೆ ಇರುತ್ತಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಕನ್ಸ್ಯೂಮರ್ ಮೂವ್ಮೆಂಟ್ನಲ್ಲಿ MR ಪೈ ಅವರು ಅತಿಶಯ ಸಫಲತೆ ಪಡೆಯಲು ಸಾಧ್ಯವಾದಷ್ಟು ಅವರ ಮಾಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಓವರ್ ಡೀಟೇಲ್, ಇಂಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮೊದಲಾದ ಗುಣಗಳಿಂದ ಅವರ ಹೇಳಿಕೆಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮಗಳು ತುಂಬ ಮಾನ್ಯತೆ ಕೊಡುತ್ತಿದ್ದರು. ಈ ಕಾರಣಗಳಿಂದ ಗೋಖಲೆ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ MR ಪೈ ಅನೇಕ ಸಲ ಬಂದಿದ್ದರು. ಹಲವು ಸಲ ಅನೌಪಚಾರಿಕ ನಿರ್ನಿಮಿತ್ತ ಭೇಟಿಗಾಗಿ ಬಂದಿದ್ದರು. ಅಂಥ ಶ್ರೇಷ್ಠ ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ಕಾರ್ಯಕರ್ತರು DVG ಅವರಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬ ಗೌರವ ಕಳೆದಿದ್ದವರು ಆದ MR ಪೈ ಅವರನ್ನು ಕುರಿತು ಪರಿಚಯ ಗ್ರಂಥ ಈ DVG ಸಭಾಂಗಣದಲ್ಲಿ ವಿಮೋಚನೆಗೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತಿರುವುದು ನಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ಸಂತೋಷ. ಒಂದೇ ಒಂದು ಮಾತು, ನನಗೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಈ ಸ್ವಾಗತ ಭಾಷಣ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ 3 ಫೌಂಡೇಶನ್, MR ಪೈ ಫೌಂಡೇಶನ್, ಫೋರಮ್ ಆಫ್ ಫ್ರೀ ಎಂಟರ್ಪ್ರೈಸ್, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಫೋರಮ್ ಆಫ್ ಫ್ರೀ ಎಂಟರ್ಪ್ರೈಸ್ 3 ಸೇರಿ ನನಗೆ ಒಪ್ಪಿಸಿದ್ರು. ಅದನ್ನು ಎಷ್ಟು ಸಮರ್ಪಕವಾಗಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನೀವೇ ಹೇಳಬೇಕು. ಆದರೆ ಭಾಳ ಇದರಿಂದ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ನಾನು ಈಗ ಸಂತೋಷ್ ಹೆಗ್ಡೆ ಅವರು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ನಡೆಸ್ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀನಿ.
First, Mr. S. Divakara, Director General, Forum of Free Enterprise and Trustee, MR Pai Foundation, to introduce us to Forum of Free Enterprise, late Mr. MR Pai and the MR Pai Foundation.
Mr. Justice Santosh Hegde, Mr. Justice K.S. Puttaswamy, Mrs. Geeta R. Pai, Mr. Santosh Nedugadi, and ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to tell you a few words about the Forum of Free Enterprise where I work, Mr. MR Pai, under whom I worked for 39 years, and the MR Pai Foundation, of which I am the member secretary and trustee. The forum was established in 1956 by the late A.D. Shroff, a champion of free enterprise. The main object of the forum is to educate the public on economic affairs. With that in the background, the forum has so far published 700 booklets, all on economic affairs. Some of them are with you in the kit given when you enter this hall. We have arranged about 2,300 public meetings, most of them in Mumbai and many other places, including in Bangalore, including several meetings in this very place. We have published over 1,100 articles on economic subjects, conducted 55 essay competitions for college students, conducted over 6,000 elocution competitions for college and students in the country, and over 300 leadership training camps for youngsters in the country. Besides, we have also arranged several seminars, career guidance sessions, and several other programs for teachers, all having a bearing on economics. Mr. A.D. Shroff was the founder president from 1956 till 65. He was sent by the British government to the Bretton Woods Conference in 1942 as an unofficial delegate. In the beginning, Lord Keynes and A.D. Shroff fought with each other. Lord Keynes called A.D. Shroff as a snake in the grass. But the same Keynes, in his report to the British government, which is part of the British archives now, has said that the most significant contribution in the entire conference was made by A.D. Shroff of India. That was A.D. Shroff. He was very close to the late J.R.D. Tata, became a director of Tata's Sons. He was director of finance, and he was always perturbed about the socialistic policies that Pandit Nehru and his government followed. So in 1956, he decided to start the forum to protect and project free enterprise. Initially, there was a lot of opposition from the government, but A.D. Shroff carried on. In fact, he sent the then Commerce Minister Manubhai Shah to meet A.D. Shroff and ask him to close down the forum in 1956. He was chairman of New India and Bank of India also at that time. A.D. Shroff told Mr. Manubhai Shah, "My hands are clean, I have not done anything wrong. Whatever I have done is within the framework of the law. So please tell Pandit Nehru that I will not close down." Pandit Nehru respected A.D. Shroff. In fact, way back in 1935, Nehru had appointed A.D. Shroff as a member of the Planning Commission of the Congress Party, although he was not a congressman. He had made him a member of the Planning Committee of the Congress Party. After A.D. Shroff died in 65, we had Morarji Vaidya as president from 65 to 68. And after Mr. Morarji Vaidya, the legendary Nani Palkiwala was our president from 68 till February 2000. Currently, Mr. Binu Shroff is our president. Ministrov is a very eminent economist and director of several companies. The forum also established the Edisov Memorial Trust in '67. After Edisov died, J.R.D. Tata said in the Sharif's condolence meeting that you should perpetuate his memory. So we started the Edisov Memorial Trust with Mr. Palkhiwala as the chairman. And this trust is administered by the Forum of Free Enterprise. And after Mr. Palkhiwala passed away in 2002, we started the Nani Palkhiwala Memorial Trust with Mr. Y.S. Malagam as the chairman. This again is administered by the forum. Now I'll tell you something about M.R. Pai. He joined the forum as its first employee when the forum started in July 1956. At that time, he was just 25. He was the secretary till 1976 when he resigned and was elected as honorary vice president of the forum. And he remained so till 2003 when he passed away. He built the forum brick by brick. For about 47 years he was associated, and along with Mr. Edisov first, then Moraji Vaidya and Nani Palkhiwala, he built the forum as a reputed national institution. In fact, he had friends all over the world. Professor Milton Friedman, the Nobel Prize winner, used to write to him quite often. Many times he used to send books authored by him. Mr. Pai, you are free to take any portion of this book and publish as a forum booklet. And we did that. And when Mr. Pai passed away, Professor Milton Friedman wrote to us, it is a loss for the free enterprise in the world. He was also a great public worker and a very fine consumer activist. Literally, directly or indirectly, he helped thousands and thousands of bank depositors, telephone subscribers, consumers, and others. I'll give you a couple of examples later. He always fought the system, not the people manning the system. He never had any harsh word against the man handling the system. For instance, many years ago, Mr. Pai and I went to Belgaum. When we went around to a few places nearby, Gokak and other places. At that time, Indian Airlines had this system. You should get your ticket endorsed before you go back. This was in the early 80s. And we found that in Gokak we were held up till 5 o'clock. So I telephoned the Belgaum station manager, said, we are held up, I can't come before 5 o'clock. Is it okay to telephone you and get the ticket endorsed? He said, fine. Now that you have telephoned, I have noted it. The flight is at 9 tomorrow, you come. On top of that, I sent a telegram. And he received that also. Next morning, we went there. He said, no seat. I said, I telephoned you, I sent you a telegram. Yeah, I got the telegram, but today no seat. So Mr. Pai, in his own quiet way, said, Divakar, come, we'll go to the nearest police station. You are threatening me? No, I'm not threatening you. I'm going to carry out the threat. We have got valid tickets. We have sent you a telegram. You are denying us the passage. Then, okay, I'll allow you to go. He said, what, okay? Are you doing me a favor? You are doing your duty by allowing us to go. Don't say, okay. Then we traveled back. Mr. Pai wrote to the managing director of Indian Airlines. When you are traveling from place to place in small places, is it possible for you to go and have your ticket endorsed? And is it not the duty of the Indian Airlines to foresee all these things? The managing director understood this. He sent a circular to all the stations. Telephonic confirmation or telegraphic confirmation are okay. About 15 days later, we both went to Belgaum again. So I got down. He asked me, along with you, one Mr. Pai had come last time. I said, he is coming down. The man had come there with garlands to receive Dilip Kumar, Saira Bhanu and others, because they were all on the same flight. Then he threw away the garlands. He went to Mr. Pai. Mr. Pai, I don't know what you have done, They have transferred me from this place to Kutch. I am retiring next year. Please have this ticket by this transfer cancelled. Mr. Pai said, look, I don't even know your name. All I said was, your system is wrong. Please rectify this system. I never said a word against you. You were doing your duty, but it was not against you. And then that's how Mr. Pai helped thousands of other people get their tickets endorsed without visiting the IAC office. I want to tell you something about the man who helped literally so many people in distress. Sometime in the 80s, one widow, mill worker's widow, walked into our office. Illiterate, her husband, a textile worker, had died. Within 6 months, unfortunately, he passed away. Before that, he had claimed his PF dues, Provident Fund dues. 6 months after he died, she felt that within 1 year of his death, she should get her daughter married, because that was the custom in their community. She went to the PF office. They said, sent her from pillar to post. 6 months, nothing happened. Somebody said, you go to MR Pai. She came. Myself and Mr. Pai always used to sit in the same room next to each other. This lady came. She could not even sign. She was very illiterate, but she narrated her story. Mr. Pai was impressed. He called a reporter, Mr. Alvin Fernandez, the chief reporter of Times of India. He came. He heard the story. He was also very distressed. He called his photographer, took a photograph. Next day, on 14th of August, in a particular year, he published in the front page her photograph along with the report that the Provident Fund Office has made her go from pillar to post. On 16th August, Justice Kantaria of Bombay High Court treated that news item as a writ petition, sent notice to the Provident Fund Office. The moment they got the notice, they prepared a check, went to the bank and deposited the PF to the bank which the old mill worker had specified. So when the date for the hearing came, they said, sir, we have done our duty, we have given the dues. He said, I don't want that. I want to know how many more cases are pending, similar cases in your office. I'll give you 15 days. So 15 days later, that man went, the Provident Fund Office advocate, 11,700 similar cases. So Justice Kantaria said, hats off to this great judge. In future, you shall decide these cases within 1 month. If not, you will have to pay from your pockets. Tell the employees. That is the rule. Sometime in July 1998, my daughter got married. In April, Mr. Pai himself forwarded my letter of application for advance my Provident Fund dues, along with the invitation, everything, in the first week of April. Marriage was in July. June, I was going around that area. I went to the Provident Fund Commissioner's office. I asked the person handling. That girl said, 3-4 mahina lagega. I said, who is your superintendent? She pointed out. I asked him, why is it? He also said, 3-4 mahina lagega. I say, hai. Then who is your section head? Same reply. I said, I want to meet the top man here. Who is the man? No, he is Deputy Provident Fund Commissioner, Mr. Krishnamurthy. I said, I want to see him. I didn't lose my cool. So I went. Krishnamurthy, Deputy Provident Commissioner, I told him, these people are saying 3 to 6 months. Why? No, yeah, it takes that much. You seem to be impatient. Of course I am impatient because it is my money. I have given you interest. I applied 4 months ago. You are still not doing anything, or you are asking me if I am impatient. No, I don't give you 3-4 mahina, come after 3-4 months. Then I said, probably you remember Mr. Justice Kantaria, Mr. Krishnamurthy, I said. The moment I said Mr. Kantaria, he shivered. No, I won't give. This was on a Friday. Saturday, Mr. Pai told me, Divakar, you prepare a note on what has happened and send it to Shirish Deshpande, who used to write in Times of India on consumer activism during those days. I prepared the note. Monday at 12 o'clock, I get my check. What they had done for 4 months, they did in 48 hours, they sent me my check. Similarly, sometime in 85, many depositors who had made deposits with Lohia machines, they were making scooters, taking 500 rupees at once. But those who wanted to cancel, the company said, no, we will not give the deposit refund. And Mumbai Grahak Panchayat is a very well-known premier consumer organization. There were two excellent consumer activists. One of them is Shirish Deshpande and Mr. Ashok Rawat. They came to Mr. Pai. Mr. Pai, can you guide us? We want to help these depositors. How many of them are there? They said about 15-20 people have approached us. So he said, you notify in the newspapers that a meeting of the depositors of this company will be held and see how many people come. And by just then, the Consumer Protection Act had been enacted. So you see how many people come. To their surprise, 1,000 people came. So they could directly go to the National Commissioner. They won the case. Lohia Machines appointed the best of the lawyers to defend them. Then the matter went to Supreme Court. Same story again. Here, Mr. Shirish Deshpande, he is a lawyer by the qualification. He himself argued. They engaged the highest paid advocate in the country. Again, the matter went in favor of the consumer. You know how many people benefited thanks to Mr. Pai's advice? 400,000 people. I know he had a very unique way of dealing with harassment from the public utilities. For a long time, he did not have a telephone at home. Mrs. Pai will certainly vouch for this. He was listed in the public worker special category because he was always criticizing the working of the telephone, the system, the corruption in the department. The department removed his name from the special category, put him in the ordinary category. He said, you refund my 10 rupees. He was the only one who has got the 10 rupees back because of this. Finally, sometime in the 80s, he got a number. He was very happy. But it was very short-lived. For the very first morning, 4 o'clock, telephones came. What time is the Dadar Express coming? What time is this train going? Because they gave a number which was attached to Dadar station until then. And the second day, same thing happened. Mr. Pai never lost his cool. He never protested. All he did was to obtain the telephone residential numbers of the general manager of the telephone, the chief engineer's residential number, and 2 other numbers. Next morning, he told his son Sham Sundar, at 4 o'clock, when the telephone inquiry, the railway inquiries come, you say the numbers have changed, these are the numbers. That's what he did. Not a letter was written, just 2 days. They knew, they played a mischief on him. They did not expect this to bounce on them. Third day, Mr. Johori, the general manager, he called me, Mr. Divakar, we have made a mistake. I'll give you 6 numbers which are unlisted. Can you please give it to Mr. Pai and tell him that these are all unlisted numbers. He can choose any one of them. And that is the number which Mrs. Pai has in her house now. And in the olden days, the moment that it rained, the telephones will go dead. Now, of course, they refuse to die many times. And sometime in the 80s, his telephone went dead. Every telephone in his building went dead. Then he wrote a letter, complained, nothing happened. And then he found out a rule in the telephone department, some rule 411 or so, saying that according to that, if a telephone complaint is made, it is the duty of the department to rectify your telephone within 72 hours. He cited that rule. He said, if you don't repair my telephone, I will claim damages from you on a daily basis. Immediately they went and repaired. And he issued a statement in the press saying that if your telephone is dead, you quote this rule number and your telephone will be repaired. Then telephone manager, general manager issued another statement. We did not repair Mr. Pai's telephone just because he quoted this rule. We repaired it only because, in the normal course we have repaired, not because he made a complaint. Then Mr. Pai, he always had something up his sleeve. He said, in that case, how is it that in my building, only my telephone was there repaired, all the others which are dead are not repaired? Department had no answer. If you remember, until the 80s, the banks did not allow you to have a nomination for your SP account. Mr. Pai was fighting for this for over 20 years. And only recently, every year we give an award to MR Pai, called MR Pai Award. In fact, we have that on 6th of September. The next 8th award will be given. One bank instituted this award after Mr. Pai died. They gave an amount of 1 lakh. One of the deputy governors of the Reserve Bank, who was the chief guest, she told the audience, it is thanks to Mr. Pai that this nomination facility was introduced for the benefit of savings bank account holders. So this is about MR Pai. The MR Pai Foundation was established in 2004. After Mr. Pai passed away, many of his friends got together and decided that we should perpetuate his memory. Mr. Ajay Piramal was requested to be the chairman of the foundation. Among the other trustees were Mr. Adi Godrej, Mr. Shesh Doshi, Mr. Kevit Kamath also was a trustee earlier, and a few others. This trust is a trust, and they believe their object is to empower the youth. With that in the background, we go around the country. Presently, we are covering 5 states. We conduct leadership training camps. The main object is we want today's generation to become good, responsible, active, and well-informed citizens of tomorrow. With that in the background and with the help of corporates, in fact, every year we spend about 25 to 30 lakhs. Thanks to excellent support we receive from corporates, thanks to the goodwill created by Mr. M.R. Pai, we receive about 25 to 30 lakhs every year from the corporates. We go around the country to conduct these leadership training camps, and particularly in small places. Mr. Piramal told me in the very first meeting, Divakar, don't go to metros, don't have any camp in Bombay, go to far-off places. We hold a camp in places like Thamna. Many of you may not know where it is. It's a 4,000 populated village in Gujarat near Anand. It's one of the 5. In fact, it was awarded the best village by President Abdul Kalam. Then we hold it in Ujire, Mulki, Nitte, Karkala, Manipal, Bhatkal. Then Hassan. Yesterday I was in Sakleshpur. We have arranged the camp next month there. Then Pollibetta. There again we are doing next month. Then Kanchipuram, Guntur, Elur, several other places, all small places. The response has been fascinating. So far we have arranged 166 camps. Each camp is of 2 days duration. Since 2004, 14,052 participants have benefited from this camp. We have also conducted 533 competitions in Bombay for school students. All are sponsored by Mr. Adi Godrej. He was very close to Mr. Pai, and every year he sponsors this activity. Then we also have arranged some programs, workshops for training the teachers. Then the trust decided to bring out the biography of M.R. Pai. We requested Mr. S.V. Raju in 2000. Raju is the chief editor of Freedom First. He knew Mr. Pai for over 4 decades. He had also worked under Mr. Minu Masani and others. He wrote a beautiful biography. It was so good that Mr. Justice Puttaswamy, after reading it, wrote, why don't you translate it to various languages and circulate among the youth? It will be very good for the youth. So when I put up this proposal before Mr. Piramal, he said certainly yes. In fact, the very first book, the English edition, was brought out in 2008. I sent complimentary copies to various friends of Pai. And you know what happened? I collected 2,78,000. On their own, people started sending. One person sent 1,20,000, 50,000. So we had money, so we were able to bring out a second edition. Again, that was sponsored by a bank. A second edition was brought out in 2011. We have Mrs. Shamala Madhav. in the audience. Mrs. Pai and I approached her some 3 years ago to translate it, and she was good enough. She has done an excellent translation, and we are grateful to you, madam, for what you have done. That will be released by Mr. Justice Santosh Hegde today. I want to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Justice Puttaswamy for the wonderful suggestion that he made that this should be translated to various languages, including Kannada. Kannada being the mother tongue of Mr. Pai. We thought we should first see the translation of this book into Kannada, and hopefully we'll translate this into other languages later on. And this function has been made possible, again, thanks to Mr. Justice Puttaswamy, who took keen interest, and Mr. S.R. Ramaswamy, who unfortunately is not present here, of the Gokhale Institute, who has made all the arrangements for this program. And I would like to thank the Gokhale Institute for this. And we are extremely grateful to our chief guest, Mr. Santosh Hegde, for accepting our invitation to release this book. Thank you very much, sir, for your kind gesture. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
As Mr. Divakara said, we have amongst us the Mrs. Shamala Madhav, who translated the English version of Mr. M.R. Pai's biography into Kannada, and who has come all the way from Mumbai on our request. We request Mrs. Madhav to accept a memento from Mrs. Geeta Pai. I request Mrs. Pai, Trustee M.R. Pai Foundation and wife of late Mr. M.R. Pai, to present the memento.
A book that has been released today, which of course is a translation of the original book, which was written by Sri S.V. Raju. The title itself is very interesting and appropriate to the memory of Mr. Pai, which says in English, Story of an Uncommon Common Man. The Kannadalli baradavare Asamanya Sri Samanya anta. In most of the activities affecting the common person, Mr. Pai was concerned about it, and he had taken a lot of time over it. And actually, I think he sacrificed many of his professional opportunities in life to fight for this cause. He believed in this cause, and come what may, he had fought for it. If you go through the book, you will see how a different person he was. He was not living for himself. He was actually leading a very frugal life. But for the people, he spent so much of his time. The man, it is said, used to get up at 3:30 in the morning and work till late in the evening. All for others, not for himself at all. Such was the personality of late M.R. Pai. Came from a middle-class family, and I presume he remained to be a middle-class person right through, though he had great opportunity of joining big companies because of his qualification he had, the experience he had, and the love and affection he had collected from various personalities who were right on top of the Indian society. Be it the House of Tatas, be it the Wadiyas, it could be anybody for that matter. And in Mumbai, I think people not only respected him, they feared him without holding an office. That's a very difficult, a rare thing. Many people are feared because they hold an office. Once they come out of the office, nobody cares about them and all. But that was not the case so far as Mr. M.R. Pai is concerned. There are some instances which Mr. Divakar read out, but I would like to point out a few of them which really impressed me. These are found in the appendix after the book, and some of them which I read really impressed me that they are, one of them is a game that was played by the Post and Telegraph Department when the conversion from annas to pies came into existence in 1962. The value of the stamp was 2 annas at that point of time. And when the rupee got changed into rupees and paise, it was 13 paise they collected. I don't think anybody cared about it. 1 paise at that point of time was not a big figure at all, and nobody cared. But Mr. Pai did care it. He questioned the honesty of the government in that. He says, how could you do this? You first convert the monetary system from annas to another type of naya paises, And then while converting that, you cheat the citizens of Singapore. That's one thing, which a letter which he wrote in 28th of March 1962. Then, this is very interesting because it struck me because there's some similar instances which took place in the Constituent Assembly debate. That is in regard to having a minimum qualification for elective office. He says, even an ordinary driver requires a license, it requires some qualification, and everybody else who is a professional personality requires a qualification. Why not you elected representatives? Most probably, constitution makers thought it's better not to give them qualification, but without qualification, they are capable of earning so much money outside the system. With qualification, I do not know what exactly they will do. But that has been proved wrong now, because the more educated you are, I think your capacity to add zeros to these scams have become a scam by itself. Now, talking about this, having qualification, this came up for consideration in the Constituent Assembly while they were debating. First question that came up for consideration was what type of a political governance this country should have. This was in 1946. And some of the elders who were in the Constituent Assembly debated and said, we Indians were never ever personally independent. We were under the Rajas and Maharajas or foreign rulers. We had no say in governance at all. Rajas and Maharajas and the foreign rulers, they made laws which they liked, and they asked us to follow that law. It was implemented against our will and wish and all. Therefore, now that we are going to become independent very shortly, let us evolve a political system whereby every Indian feels that I am independent. This country is mine. This government is mine. It works for me. That feeling you should get. So then they analyzed the various constitutions all over the world, and there was a system which was acceptable to the members of the Constituent Assembly called the Democratic Republic. So we adopted that. The next question came for consideration was, how will you constitute this thing? Then the population of India was 40 crores. All 40 crores cannot go and sit in the parliament or in the assembly. So they said we will have a representative form of governance. We will send our representatives to the parliament or to the legislature. They can rule on our behalf. That was a discussion that was made in the Constituent Assembly. Therefore, who should elect them? Everybody in the Constituent Assembly agreed any person who has come of age, a particular age, should have that right. So we adopted adult franchise. The third question, that is what something got to do with this letter which late Pai wrote on 16th of August 1962. The question arose, should the person who is going to contest an election should have an educational qualification? Then very famous constitutional expert said, right to vote is one thing, but to right to contest is not the same as right to vote. The person who wants to contest and become a representative of the people must have the capacity to find out and understand the problems of the people, then take it to the parliament or the legislature, and convincingly explain it to the other members of the parliament, so that they can understand him and agree with him, then they make a law on that. But, everybody, it is said, everybody agreed for that suggestion that there should be some minimal qualification to this. But one person stands up and says, then the Constituent Assembly Speaker was called the President. Says, President, sir, just now we were told a few days back that we have adopted democracy as the system of governance in this country. You promised us that definition of democracy was government of the people, by the people, for the people. We all thought it is ours. Anybody can become a member of parliament or a legislature. But now you are going to impose some minimal qualification. He says, President, sir, today, the population of this country is 40 crores. And 80% of them are totally illiterates. So you want a 20% democracy in this country? he questioned. And the editor of that Constituent Assembly debate writes at the bottom, says, the entire assembly was stunned. Nobody had the courage to rebut him. Then the constitutional expert who made the suggestion himself stands up and says, I am sorry. I did not look at it from this angle where the honorable member is 100% right. If it is going to be a democracy, then everybody who is a citizen of this country who has come of certain age must have the right to contest. Of course, Mr. Pai takes a different view. He says, basically, there should be a qualification. But this lone member puts it otherwise. If you want to have a democracy, how can you keep somebody out of democracy? So, in the Constitution, no educational qualification was fixed for the purpose of a person who is contesting. This particular incident has a lot of lessons for the present-day legislators and members of parliament. A lot of it. A, you must have the capacity to understand the problems of your voters, the constituents. B, you must have the capacity to go and speak there and convince. And today, I think most of them are educated, but I don't think they utilize their education for the purpose of representing people today at all. I'll give an example. There is a magazine called Election Watch, which made a performance audit of the members of Lok Sabha from 2004 to 2009. And after that audit, it came to the conclusion, which it's published in a report. It says, out of the 242 plus members of Lok Sabha for the year 2004-2009, entire 5 years, only 172 spoke. What's the use of your educational qualification? What's the use of your all other... I think apart from apart from doing everything else, I think they don't do anything in the legislature which contributes to the proceedings of the legislature. How concerned he was. 1964, 62, this letter was written. And similarly, black money. National service rendered by black money. This is a letter written on 23rd of October 1964. Nothing happened. Until in 2008, when the Swiss government published the names of 5 countries and said that if your government is interested in taking this money back, convince us that it is contrary to Swiss law as well as a law pertaining, applicable in your country. October 2008, till date nothing has happened until Supreme Court started suo motu investigation. The CBI went and investigated something, then the finance ministry did something about it, and ultimately till today nothing has happened. And look at the man's foresight. In 62, he identifies the amount, the quantum, not figuratively, but says so much of black money is available, not only in foreign countries, but also in India. He also says that 1/3 of the black money is collected by the people who are in administration itself. Others may be by the industrialists and others. And what is the figure that is there in 2008? What was there? As per the Swiss government release itself, it is in 2008, 1,456 billion American dollars worth of Indian money. And what is the consequences of that? In 2009, I attended a seminar in which an economic advisor said, if you bring that 1,456 billion American dollars worth of Indian money to an Indian bank and keep it in an interest-bearing account, then from the annual interest that it derives, the entire financial budget of the country can be met from that without 1 rupee tax, past or future. Entire interest, entire budget of the government of India. That's not all. From the balance of interest that is left, the entire foreign debt of this country can be paid up in 24 hours. That's not all. In 2009, there were 592 districts all over this country. The administrative expenses of all these 592 districts can be met from the balance interest for that year. Ladies and gentlemen, just imagine what is the loss that is being caused to this country. The money is taken in contravention of the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act and various other enactments you have. Government of India does not want to bring it back here to India. Why? If it is your money and my money, it would have come in the month of December 2008. Because obviously it is a money belonging to somebody very powerful. And today, don't entertain a hope that that money will ever come back to India. Because the banking system internationally is such, you can in few hours transfer that money from the bank where it is to another bank in another country. And there are about 32 tax havens in this world. Who will keep it there still when this controversy is going on? Baba Ramdev is striking, having unshans, and others are shouting from the rooftop. That money will not be there. But at least let us know who are the persons who had that account there. We will be satisfied with that. But look at this man's thing. This is what he writes. Black money, about which so much is being said these days, is the illegitimate child of every controlled and heavily tax-ridden economy. When laws multiply, become complicated, and taxes strain human nature, the cost of honesty goes up. Like any other commodity, many ordinarily decent people are unable to afford honesty at such a prohibitive price. Therefore, in their economic dealings, black money or unrecorded gains become the order of the day. As the finance minister pointed out, black money, like an iceberg, is mostly hidden beneath the surface. It may be added that 1/3 of this iceberg belongs to the dishonest businessmen and industrialists, another 1/3 to the corrupt officers, and the last part to the corrupt professional politicians. Black money arises from the collusion of the three and is thus shared between them, and is truly socialistic spirit of egalitarianism, written on 23rd of October 1964, and it is relevant even today. And it also shows how callous, if not arrogant, the views of the government are in regard to this black money. There are many things like immunity to MPs, a very relevant subject even today, when they start asking the people of India, who are you, unelected, unelectable tyrants? Who are you to question the government or parliament? There are such people in the parliament. Well, this is not a story. This was addressed by a sitting member of the parliament when Anna team was negotiating with the government of India for a strong Lokpal bill. Then I don't want to use the word, then this person comes up and says, who are you? Unelected, unelectable tyrants. Who are you to negotiate with the government? And another member, when the Lokpal bill was being discussed in the Lok Sabha, he read a letter written by Anna Hazare to the Honorable Prime Minister. And he reads one sentence in that which read, Honorable Prime Minister, do not forget the fact that you are a public servant. He took exception to that. He said, look at this audacity of this man. He's calling the Prime Minister of this country a public servant. What will he call us? Iವರು ಜನತಾ ಸೇವಕರಲ್ಲಿದ್ರೆ ಜನತಾ ಮಾಲೀಕರೇನ್ರಿ? ಯಾವ ಕಾಯ್ದೆ ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೂ ತೆಗೆದು ನೋಡಿ ನೀವು, ಅವರೆಲ್ಲ ಪಬ್ಲಿಕ್ ಸರ್ವೆಂಟ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಸರ್ಕಾರದಿಂದ ಏನೋ ವೇತನ ಪಡೆಯೋರು ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಪಬ್ಲಿಕ್ ಸರ್ವೆಂಟೇ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಪ್ರಧಾನಮಂತ್ರಿ, ಮುಖ್ಯ ನ್ಯಾಯಾಧೀಶರು ಅಂತ ಏನಿಲ್ಲ, ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಪಬ್ಲಿಕ್ ಸರ್ವೆಂಟೇ. ಆದರೆ ಅಹಂಕಾರ ಆ ಪತ್ರ ಬರೆದವ್ರದ್ದಲ್ಲ, ಅಹಂಕಾರ ಇದ್ರ ವಿಚಾರ ಮಾತೆತ್ತಿದ್ದವ್ರದ್ದು. ಜನತಾ ಸೇವಕರು ಅಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವ ಒಂದು ಮನೋಭಾವನೆ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಂಥ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳಿದ್ದು. This is the way. And they get protection. And in one of the letters he wrote, he questions why the salary of members of parliament has been increased to 12,000 rupees per month. Today it is about 1,25,000 per month. But the man had the foresight to identify it and say, is it correct for people who go there to serve the nation to collect such huge sums of money as salary? ಬೇರೆ ಸೌಲಭ್ಯಗಳು ಬೇರೆ. ಆದರೆ ಇಂಥ ಒಂದು ಸಂಬಳ ಸಿಗುವುದಾದರೆ ನಾವು ಓದಬೇಕಾಕೆ, ಕಷ್ಟಪಡಬೇಕಾಕೆ? ರಾಜಕೀಯಕ್ಕೆ ಸೇರಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ಎಲ್ಲಾದರೂ ಗೆದ್ದುಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಸಾಕಲ್ಲ. ಮತ್ತು ಪೆನ್ಷನ್ ಬೇರೆ ಇದೆ ಈ ನಡುವೆ. 5 ವರ್ಷ ಒಬ್ಬ ಸದಸ್ಯನಾಗಿದ್ದರೆ ಅವನಿಗೆ ಪೆನ್ಷನ್ ಇದೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಅವ್ನು ಸತ್ತೋದ್ರೆ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಪೆನ್ಷನ್ ಬೇರೆ ಇದೆ. ನೋಡಿ ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಎಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇವೆ. ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಜನತಾ ಸೇವೆ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮತ ಕೊಡಿ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರ್ತಾರೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗಿ ಸೇವೆ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ನಮಗೆ ಸಂಬಳ ಕೊಡಿ, ಪೆನ್ಷನ್ ಕೊಡಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿಗೆ ನಾನು ಹೋದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೂ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಪೆನ್ಷನ್ ಕೊಡಿ ಅಂತಾರೆ. ಈ ಸಮಾಜದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಥ ಮಹಾನ್ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳಿದ್ದರೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಆದರೂ ನಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತೇನೋ ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲಿ ಏನೇನು ತಪ್ಪುಗಳಾಗ್ತಾ ಇವೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಪ್ರಜಾಪ್ರಭುತ್ವದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗ್ತಾಯಿದೆ ಅಂತ. ನಾನೇ ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ ಒಂದು ಅಂಕಣ ಬರೆದಿದ್ದೆ, ವಿಜಯ ವಾಣಿ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಪೇಪರಲ್ಲಿ. ನಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರಜಾಪ್ರಭುತ್ವದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಜನರಿಂದ ಜನರಿಗಾಗಿ ಜನರ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಅಂತ ಜೋರಾಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ನಾವು ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇವೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೆದೆ, ನನ್ನಿಂದ ನನಗಾಗಿ ನನ್ನ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಅಂತ. ಹೆಡ್ಲೈನ್ಸ್ ಅದು, ಶೀರ್ಷಿಕೆನೇ ಅದು. ಇದೇ ರೀತಿ ಭಾಳಷ್ಟಿವೆ. ಎಲ್ಲ ನಾನಿಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಮತ್ತು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಓದುವ ಒಂದು ಉತ್ಸಾಹವನ್ನು ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ. ಖಂಡಿತವಾಗಿ ಭಾಳ ಉತ್ತಮವಾದ ಪುಸ್ತಕ, ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಅನುವಾದ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಮ್ಮ, ನಿಮಗೂ ಒಂದು ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನು ಅರ್ಪಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ಮುದ್ರಣ ಮಾಡಿದಂಥ ಅಡಿಗರವರಿಗೂ ನಾನು ನನ್ನ ಇದನ್ನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಭಾಳ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಅದನ್ನು ಮತ್ತು ಈ 3 ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯವರು ಸೇರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಿಡುಗಡೆ ಮಾಡುವಂಥ ಒಂದು ಆಪರ್ಚುನಿಟಿ ನನಗೆ ಒಪ್ಪಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರಿಗೂ ವಂದನೆಗಳನ್ನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು.
One more round of applause for May we request Mrs. Pai to present a memento to our chief guest? As all good things come to an end, we will now conclude the program with a vote of thanks by Mr. Santosh Nedungadi, member of the Forum's Council of Management.
Justice Puttaswamy, ladies and gentlemen, I am personally very happy to have been given this opportunity because Mr. Pai is the person who brought me into the forum and into these activities. And I always considered him to be a one-man army as far as the consumer movement is concerned. And we are very glad that today we have another one-man army against corruption to have released this book. Justice Hegde, we'd like to say a very big thank you to you for not only accepting our invitation, but also for the comparisons that you made with reference to Mr. Pai's work several years back and what is happening today. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here and for your excellent address. I'd like to also thank Justice Puttaswamy, Mr. S.R. Ramaswamy, Honorary Secretary of the Gokhale Institute of Public Affairs, Mr. Ramu, Mr. Sanjay Adiga, the publisher, and of course, Ms. Shamla Madhav, the translator, who's done a fantastic job of the translation. And to you, ladies and gentlemen, whenever Mr. Hegde speaks, we know there is an audience, but we also believe that the memory of Mr. Pai lives on even after 10 years, and that's why you're here this evening. Thank you very much for your presence. May I now request Mr. Divakara to please present mementos to the guests on the dais.